do that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Well, g'day, folks. How are you? I hope you're having a bloody good sort of a day. It's been beautiful in this part of the world. Quite nice during the day, but boy, cool. Get out of that sun and, it's cool, to say the very least. I've had a few people comment on the Tasmanian grey jacket that I've been wearing in and around today. Thank you once again, Black Sheep. They're all wondering where they can get one. I said, you're going to get a mate in Tasmania. It's about the only way I can find to get it, but... Thank you very much, brother. Keeping me warm. Who was in the house the first time tonight? I'm the last free Kiwi who's put up a song, which I didn't have a look at. I beg your pardon, but I'll go and have a look at after all of this, if I can copy and paste it out of there. Hello, what the? Deb's in there too. Yes, Deb, the subs have hit 11K. I only noticed that myself this morning. I think it happened yesterday. And I lost one while I was watching it today. I think it was 11,017 and it dropped to 11,016. So I don't know what I said. But, well, they go up, they go down. What's going on in the world today? Well, there are a few weird things going on in the world today. Albo Sleazy went to the Ekka and nobody pinned a medal on him for best beast at the show. Sadly. Well, he'd hardly be the best, would he? And then apparently he's jumped on a plane to go to New Zealand. And he'll be making friends with whatever corrupt government is over there at the moment, as they're all part of the little orchestration that's going on. And the lines are being pretty well defined now. If you're watching, you can see who Australia is siding with, particularly in regards to the Palestinian-Israeli issue. And now it really doesn't matter who Australia sides with, because as we've heard, and we'll talk about shortly, Donald Trump has got a little bit to say about what's going on there too. So, Spazza, good to have you in, brother. Hope you're going all right, mate, and keeping warm. You think that he went over to pick up some of those warm New Zealand jumpers. Well, wouldn't it be interesting if the Australian Prime Minister came back wearing possum? Because that's a lot of what is very warm and worn in New Zealand, possum. But, of course, here they are protected. In New Zealand, not so much. Let me just scroll down because I haven't been into the chat for a little while. And thank you, Aussie Sue. God love you. Hello to all of our mods. I think Michelle's in there. I saw her name, and the lovely Sunflower, of course, who keep the chat rooms for what they are. And Aussie Sue's always the first one to remember to please like and share. Now, something I did see in the analytics, and this is weird, folks. I should have taken a screen grab of it to show you. But it says that the channel is up 106% in views, but the revenue has gone backwards. It's under $200 now. It started, I think, at about 226. So let's not say we've lost a lot of money. But it's interesting that over the course of this measurement period, we have grown the channel with 46 or 48 more subs than it had previously. They are staying longer, watching longer, and yet all of a sudden we're putting up more content with shorts, and all of a sudden everything else is going backwards. And there were 3 likes. So I don't know, this thing tells me at the moment that there's a couple of hundred people watching. So if you all hit like now, in theory, depending on what channel you're watching, I guess, won't it? So you've got to be watching the main VOF channel to do that. But if you all hit like now, let's see what the algorithm says tomorrow about this show and how many likes it got, because I'm sure I can count on more than 3 of you to hit the thumbs up button for tonight's show. I'm sure you'll find something of value that'll give you the thumbs up. I should change my glasses, because otherwise I'm going to sit there lifting these ones up all night, which will be a pain in the ass for us all. And Vince is being a legend tonight. Thank you, my friend. Bring the bloody microphone in. Right. Speaking of Vince, have you seen these magnificent creations? I haven't spoken to him today, and I will speak to him after the show because I do need to speak to him. These contain 10 1/10 Ainsley rounds, or as they are better known, Byron Bobs. Now, I've had a few people who say they would like one of these. Now, we can do that for you. We're trying to figure out how much we can do that for you. And obviously there are costs involved with all the silver. I do have the silver. I just don't own it. I've got to pay for it. And that'll be what ultimately these things do. We're not out to make money out of it so much, but Vince and his time, his machinery and his plastics and all the other bits and pieces, all that has to be covered. So we're just in the throes of figuring out what one of these, complete with 10 of these, is worth. And if you would like one, like the 4 or 5 people who've contacted me today have said they do, then we'll be able to sort that out for you in the near future. I don't know how much more of the blue stuff Vince has got. He might have to go out and get another reel, but we're going to need a few more of those things printed up. And we probably need a steadier hand than mine for colouring in the Voice of Freedom with a silver pen. I'm just saying. I either need a thinner pen or a much, much steadier hand. That's all I can say. But, yeah, they've gone off. And particularly when you see them live, I was going to say, but when you actually see them in person, they pop coming out of that box. They absolutely pop. So got to be happy with that. If you're interested, then email me or Vince at vofhq.com. Don't put me at VOF, put Carl at vofhq.com. And while you're at it, if you're in the mood for interesting things and maybe you would like to buy a couple of these things or 7 of them even or more, then you could use $750 to do it with. And we can help you with that too. Only $2 a ticket. I think we have 180 odd tickets left in this particular draw. That means 9 people who want to buy 20 tickets, I beg your pardon, would cost $40. Or 18 people to buy 10 tickets, or I guess 60 of you to buy 1 each. Does that sound okay? $2 a ticket. Go to merch.vofhq.com and we'll give one of you $750. I promise you, as soon as it's drawn, you'll get an email. If you provide your bank details back to us straight away, then Vince will make sure that the money is in your hot little bank pocket immediately, if not sooner. And then, of course, we'll put some money into Sandy's account as well. We'll pay a couple of bills here, and we will move on to draw number 5, which I'm pretty excited about because we're giving away gold. If you'd like a gram of gold, maybe you've not got any gold at all in your kick, and while a gram of gold is not a large amount of gold, it is certainly a beginning. And if you would like one of those grams of gold, then you'll need to be in draw number 5. That's coming up after we finish this one. Like I say, only about 180 tickets left in there. So if you could, folks, please go to VOF or merch.vofhq.com. Click on the Sanctuary 750 button. And if you haven't already bought your quota of 20 tickets, then buy whatever you can afford. And we hope to be able to give you 750 nicker in the not too distant future. And then after that, some gold. And then after that, maybe a bit of silver and all sorts of good things are coming our way. Sandy, God love you. I know that the Donkey Sanctuary is expecting more new arrivals. Another 4 donkeys, I think, coming from Mackay, I want to say I saw posted somewhere. So I'm not sure if you're going up to get them, but if you are, I'm sure you'll be calling past. If that is the case, love to see you, but I know you don't come past my door when you go up that way. However, it's just an example to you folks of just how far Sandy and Baz will go. Now, they may not have to travel up to collect these animals, but there's a better than 50-50 chance that they will. And this is what they do. They will travel from their place, drive a couple of days nonstop to get wherever these animals are. And most often, they've got to wander out into the paddocks or the wherever these animals are being held, and they're usually not in stalls. They've got to go out into the paddocks and round them up, bring them in, and then get them loaded up and on their way back to their new home. So it's a big job. So yeah. What's this? What the? Hey, Sandy, next time Carl's there, get him to dress up as Shrek and take some pics. Shrek and Donkey, eh? Well, gee, thanks for that. What the? I'm appreciating that. Wow. I hope the rain leaves you alone, Sandy. God knows the animals will probably want to be out in the sunshine when you get it. You got to get it, though. We had a weird thunderstorm come through here late this afternoon, speaking of weird things. It was more or less dry, but there was a lot of lightning. I think it was heading towards Brisbane, Logan area particularly. I reckon there might have been a bit of hail in it, but anyway, it is what it is. All right, so I think I've just about got down to the end here. Looks like Rachel's got a couple of remedies happening for her neuropathy, and I was told today, I don't know if Pete from Pinaroo is in, he might have to go and repeat all of it for me, but there are a couple of interesting fruits that you could use, including a prickly pear. I think that was it, prickly pear flesh. Eat that. That'll help you with neuropathy, and there was something else, but hopefully he'll put it up in the comments at some stage. G'day, Phil. Hope you're doing all right, brother. And Life the Universe is kicking on. Vincenzo, you're a wonderful man and doing great things in the chat. And I think I've nearly got to the bottom of it. Oh, God, I get to the bottom of it and it screams back up the top again. Geez, you're all commenting tonight. All right. Well, you're all having a fun time. Thank you, Vince. Yes, microphone worked out well. And shall we get on with it? We got a lot to say about this event, and I'm afraid none of it's good. There is a lot of weirdness going on around this event. There's a lot of promises about people who can speak at the event, but there does not appear to be anybody who is prepared to put their name to it outside of Beck Freedom at this stage that says they're organising it. And with the greatest respect to Beck Freedom, I'd be surprised if all this ends there. The story that Beck has been putting forward is that this whole genesis for this idea, this march on the 31st of August, has come forward from a 14-year-old young man in Adelaide who was concerned about his future and the future of his children and what sort of country Australia will be when he's of an age to start bringing new Australians into it. And I don't mean over the border, I mean by having children of his own. Once Beck saw this tweet or this whatever it was on X or whatever platform it was, she wound up contacting this young man, wanted to know the ins and outs of his story, and that's where she says, that's the background that I've given you. She said, well, I can help, introduce you to a few people in a few different places, or we can start pushing this. And he said, yeah, great, go for it. It went viral very quickly, which is not something I think Beck arranged. In fact, I'm sure she didn't. When it blew up, she approached this young man again. This is her telling of the story, and I'm sort of paraphrasing. She approached the young man again. He didn't want to do anything with it. He didn't want to be associated with it. He was all a bit shy, was quite surprised at how big it had blown up, and, he was a bit concerned. So she said, well, are you happy for me to keep pushing it and keep it going in every capital city? And yes was the resounding reply. Now, that's the story I've heard. That's out of her mouth, but she was telling somebody else. She's not replying to my phone calls. She's almost turned into Bosie or Wilson. who just, turn off all communications when it suits them and don't bother. And it is also a trait that both Bosey and Wilson use over others in this particular space to stop us talking to each other. Or if you want to talk to me, you won't ever talk to Leibold. I think that was, no, the actual quote was, if you ever want to work with me again, you will never work with Carl again. That was the quote given to the Galactic Larrikins by Bosey. And they weren't the first ones to receive it, not necessarily about me, but others have been on that same receiving end. And it's interesting. Up until now, Beck's been very open to taking my phone calls when I've rung. We don't communicate often, but there's never been an issue picking up the phone or returning a phone call until now. I don't know why, but I'm finding it very difficult to get out and support this. And I was talking again with Craig Cole this morning, and one of these nights we'll get him on, and we will talk further about this, particularly with what's happening in Melbourne. We're a little bit distanced from it in Queensland, and I dare say in South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania, we are all somewhat separated from the realities of life in Victoria and, to a certain extent, in New South Wales. That's, in theory, going to change with this march. I don't know how. I don't know why. I can't get an answer from anybody about what it's going to achieve. And as I pointed out in last night's show, if there were 100,000 or if there were 500,000 Palestinians or supporters who walked across the Sydney Harbour Bridge a couple of weeks ago, I ask you, what did it achieve? Other than, Albanese is now saying Palestine will be a nation. He is falling in line with his European masters there. And when I say European masters, there are two sets of European masters, and that schism has started to open up. There are the ones who are siding with Trump in the EU, and there are the ones who are fighting against him. And I put Emmanuel Macron and the bloke he's married to at the top of that list. The EU, the Parliament of Europe, has come to its senses and realised that there's very little point in, bad-mouthing Trump going forward. Trump went over, had a bit of a conversation with the woman from the EU, the president. I've forgotten her name, not worth remembering. And she came out on her knees. No, I won't make that analogy. But after the conversations with Trump, it was quite clear that Europe had nowhere to go and they should fall in line immediately. So, broadly speaking, many countries have. Of course, many others can't because they're associated with BRICS, and that in itself is another interesting front of the war that is very definitely being fought. Those BRICS nations, and there are quite a number of them, are putting a huge amount of pressure on the US dollar. Trump is trying desperately to save the US dollar, or is he? Is it just the appearance of saving the US dollar? Because he's not ready to have it collapse yet. Bear in mind, Trump is a big fan of CBDCs. He's a very big fan of digital currency. And, well, the current Trump is, at any rate. He never used to be. Weird. And there are a lot of things now starting to come out about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And, look, I remember living through it, the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. I vaguely remember Donald Trump popping up in the 80s and in the 90s and in the noughties with various beautiful women hanging off his arm. I have heard some very disturbing interviews with Donald Trump, one particularly with Howard Stern, who has lost his contract with Sirius XM Media by the look of it. Won't be getting back on the air. They were discussing Trump's daughter, Ivanka, whatever her name is, and just how beautiful she was. Trump did sound quite sick in his descriptions of her, even to a point saying, God, if she wasn't my daughter, I'd give her a couple more years, I'd date her. he's just, okay. I don't know. The bloke might be just a weird sense of humor. And there are people like that who I have met. They don't mean anything by it. It just comes out the weird and wrong way. But, when you're talking about Howard Stern also leering. I mean, I'm just putting myself in this position. In my entire life, and I haven't had an extensive dating life, I'll just tell you, I haven't had a bevy of women and I haven't had a great lot of girlfriends. But most of them had a father. And I can tell you that I would no sooner in a conversation with their father say, geez, your daughter's got a great ass, then I would punch him in the nose. I mean, what sort of an individual says that to a father? And then have the father turn around and say, yeah, she does. So look, when they say there is smoke and fire, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there seems to be a lot of smoke around Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's association. I think a lot of that is going to come very clear in the not too distant future. One of the things that is being talked about at the moment as a negative, and I guess it is if it's true, for Donald Trump is to do with his association with Jeffrey Epstein back in the 90s. Now, this was at a time when Prince Andrew was flying high and was very definitely in the sway of Ghislaine Maxwell. They were close friends, had been for many years out of England. And Maxwell, of course, at this stage was working with Jeffrey Epstein in whatever business you want to call they were having. Trump and Epstein were high flyers in New York at the time, and we've seen the evidence of them being together. Well, there has been some news, and I say news in inverted commas because there is no way to currently to back up or sustain anything that I'm about to tell you. So everything from this point on is alleged, and I have no way. I've been trying for the last couple of hours to find other sources. But given where this has come from, it's difficult to get different angles, different corroborating sources. So take it for what you will. This sort of information is being released on a daily basis, and it's being released in dribs and drabs. So this information about Epstein and Trump is quite shocking to a lot of people. The first part of what I'll tell you is that around the time that Princess Diana divorced Charles, Epstein and Trump are alleged to have started a bet together. And the bet was to see who could bed Princess Diana first, Trump or Epstein. Now, Epstein, because of his relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell and her association with the royals through the UK, had access to Princess Diana when she came to America. And he became the person that was responsible for making the seats around Diana were always full. If she was at a fashion event or she was at some sort of public event and somebody had to get up and go to the loo or do whatever, then somebody would be, a seat filler would be slipped in there beside her so that she never had anybody or never had a vacant seat beside her. Of course, those seats were highly prized, and you didn't just slip in your usual seat filler from the Oscars for that sort of an event. And Donald Trump, it is alleged, wanted to be the person who granted access to that seat to people at those events. He wanted the kind of access and control, if you like, control of information, access to her particularly, and whatever was being imparted to her, that Epstein had. And Epstein refused. Now, I haven't done the timeline matchup yet between when Epstein apparently refused this, and we can go back. I can't remember what years it was that Diana divorced Charles. I want to say it was 92, but I could be very wrong. All the years blend into a sort of Johnny Walker and Bundy haze at one point, and I don't really recall what happened which year, if I'm brutally honest. So marry that up with the times later in the 90s that we can identify as Epstein and Trump moments, that could be able to give some sustainability to some of these arguments. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell obviously is a key to, I think, what is going forward with regards to what's happening with the Epstein files. Now, the Epstein files may not just be what people assume them to be, a blackmail operation. Some person got caught sticking part of their body into a portion of another person's body that was probably too young to have it stuck there. And it may go a lot deeper and a lot worse than that. And Ghislaine Maxwell, from the accounts that are being spoken about now, after her 2 days of depositions that were taken with the Assistant Attorney General of the US in a Tallahassee, Florida prison about a fortnight ago, if what is coming out and what is being leaked about that at the moment is true, then shit, the world is going to get shook up in an amazing way. And it could, in part, have a lot to do with what's going on in different parts of the world at the moment. So let me give you a little bit of an idea. There have been numerous attempts on Ghislaine Maxwell's life, so it is claimed, in the Tallahassee prison. They moved her out of the Tallahassee prison and into what is ostensibly a pre-release prison farm, much more cushy part of the world. That's what we're told. But this particular leak that I've read insists that she isn't there. She is, in fact, at Fort Worth, which for the last couple of years has been turned into a... I don't know. I guess the easiest way to explain it might be a white hat bunker, a white hat control center, and is strictly controlled. Access to it and from it is strictly controlled. That's where this alludes that she is currently living under the protection of Tier 1 US Special Forces operators, because there have been numerous attempts on her life. She was taken out of the cell that she was in and the block that she was in, I believe, early in the period when she went to Tallahassee, and she was put into a cell by herself. That cell was still on a tier, and she still had access to that tier during the time where other inmates had access to the tier. But apparently it was one of those protection kind of tiers, so everybody was in for something pretty bad. Nobody was killing anyone. So now that they've heard in that Tallahassee prison that she has gone to somewhere more cushy, there are riots, apparently. Many of these parts of this story really don't ring true to me. Who really cares if there's a riot? They just lock them down. And you'd never hear about the riot. They just lock them down until they're ready to calm down. And who cares if she got a better ride? You don't. Bad luck. That'll be the whole deal. The prisoners don't have too much they can say or do. Anyway, back to some of the information that it appears has sprouted forth out of Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, this story says that she has delivered somewhere in the vicinity of 6 terabytes of evidence. That includes flight logs, that includes satellite tagged locations, it includes hidden video archives from Little St. James Island that hadn't been found at this point. It also includes video archive and blackmail material from New Mexico and from 2 residences in Paris. Interesting. Also interesting that the Macrons have been in the US recently trying to threaten, I think, Candace Owens into revealing that whatever fella Macron married back in the day is actually a woman, not having much luck proving that. Candace Owens has pretty much proved the opposite, and the French don't understand how the American legal system works, and they can't just shut the free press up. Mind you, he could be forgiven for thinking that that isn't the case in America, because most of the American free press is exactly shut up. Not shut up, bribed shut is what they are. Paid huge amounts of money to tell lies. Candace Owens, on the other hand, not so much. She's telling a lot of truths. So some of the other things that she has been speaking about include she's been naming names, royals that have been involved. Prince William's name has been mentioned as someone who came to the island very secretively, but has definitely been there. Tech billionaires, finance moguls, NGO heads, so non-government organization heads, like the people who run UNESCO or UN-funded child trafficking operations in the guise of aid. Those kind of people, they get invited there. Bill Gates. She tells a lot of interesting stories about Bill Gates. And this is where some of the blackmailing gets darker. Bill Gates isn't necessarily there because he has a fetish for little girls or boys. He has a fetish for experimentation. And he has been, it is alleged, contriving with chemists and associated others to come up with new concoctions, new things they can jab into people, and ways that they can develop new forms of hybrid life, if you like, between our species and whatever one they decide to try and marry those cells up with. There is also a significant degree of evidence to suggest that Bill Gates is alleged to have been involved in the production of biometric assassination and blackmail tools, meaning that certain things have been engineered to have very detrimental effects on specific people. So they can jab you with something that at a moment's notice can give you a heart attack because you're prone to a heart attack, or maybe an aneurysm or something. It would look completely natural. They have been able to, if they couldn't blackmail people using sexual ways, young children and the like, then they would attempt to do it biologically by implanting them with some form of time bomb, health time bomb, if you like, that could be triggered. And of course, the only savior, it is alleged, would be Mr. Gates and his band of very, very sick medical types, no doubt working very closely with Big Pharma, putting it all together. These are just some of the things that have been coming out. Some of the other things that are coming out, well, I mentioned the Fort Worth military base. They're saying it's been turned into a federal correctional center. And speaking of federal, you're going to hear a lot of that tonight, federalized and federalizing certain assets owned by the US government. It appears Fort Worth has been federalized into a prison. Now, if that is where Ghislaine Maxwell is, she's probably in pretty good company. A lot of the people that go into Fort Worth go in by black helicopter, and they leave on an unscheduled flight that goes to Gitmo. So these have been tracked, and you can guarantee these sort of things happen. So she has provided a wealth of information, not just on Jeffrey Epstein, but on a global list of clients, a global list of elites in the banking, finance, and government areas, and more particularly in the private companies that hide in places like Switzerland and Luxembourg and Liechtenstein. And those nameless, faceless people of the deep state have been identified. And if you have eyes to see, and well, maybe you don't, maybe we need to go and look at a few things to just see what we do think is going on at the moment. Okay, so maybe a few of the things that are going on, and let me go down here to my video. We can probably start with this one. Donald Trump has decided that he is going to take over Washington, D.C. and going to federalize it. What does that mean? Well, it means he's going to fulfill a promise that he made in the lead up to the 2024 election. And we'll play that now. You'll see it's a mismatch of just how many times he promised this. And then toward the end of it, you will see exactly what he's planning to do with Washington, D.C.
We're going to take over the capital of the United States, and we're going to run it in the federal government. It's going to be run properly and safely. Nobody's going to get shot. We're going to take it over. We're going to federalize it. We're also going to federalize Washington, D.C. It's become hell on earth. We're going to have to take it over. We're going to federalize it. We're going to take it over. We're going to run it, and we're going to run it properly. We're going to run it very, very strongly, and there's not going to be people shot. We're going to do something about Washington. We're going to bring in the federal government. We're going to federalize it. We're going to run it properly, clean it, make it safe. Washington, D.C., our once beautiful capital, has become a dirty, crime-ridden death trap that must be taken over and properly run by the federal government. It is and will be part of my election platform. But the problem with Washington, D.C., is too dangerous. We're going to clean that city up, but we're going to make it greater. We're going to make it safe. We're going to take over Washington, D.C. We're going to run it properly. We're going to get rid of the slums. We're going to open up our parks. We're going to have to get rid of the tent cities and the tents all over the place. In cities where there has been a complete breakdown of law and order, where the fundamental right of our citizens are being intolerably violated, I will not hesitate to send in federal assets, including the National Guard, until safety is restored. We will take over the horribly run capital of our nation in Washington, D.C., and clean it up, renovate it, and rebuild our capital city so that it's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime. We will take over the horribly run capital of our nation in Washington, D.C., and clean it up, renovate it, rebuild our capital city so there's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime. We're going to stop the murder and crime. We will take over the horribly run capital of our nation in Washington, D.C. We will take over the horribly run capital of our nation, Washington, D.C. It's like a murder capital of the world, and clean up, renovate, and rebuild our wonderful capital. We will take over our horribly run capital of our nation in Washington, D.C., and clean it up, renovate it, rebuild our capital so that it's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime. And you don't want to be mugged or shot.
You're getting the idea, aren't you? He's been talking about it for so long. Today he's come out and done something about it. Now, the New York Post has come out and said he is preparing to send the National Guard in. And by the looks of it, that is exactly what he's preparing to do. Now, the National Guard wouldn't be the first time they've been on the streets of New York, and it certainly will not be the last. So by taking federal control of Washington, D.C., this creates a very interesting point in U.S. history. He's hinted at the National Guard being put on the streets. Well, they're already on the streets. They're not patrolling it as such yet, but that is a very short step. And Donald Trump and his associated administration have already fired a number of FBI agents who have refused to patrol Washington, D.C. streets. If, in fact, Washington, D.C. is federalized, you will see the D.C. dropped, and we've pointed that out in the backgrounds. It's already been dropped off many of the logos that they use. That will disappear because it needs to be renamed somewhat because they have a Washington state, obviously. So they can't have Washington, Washington. They need to have a Washington something, or they need to rename, preferably just bury the place back into, turn it into a swamp that it really should be. But that's probably not likely to happen. Now, of course, Washington is not like any other city in the world because of that D.C. Orientation. And that changes things quite remarkably. It allows Donald Trump to do some very interesting things. And it certainly sets D.C. apart, much like the City of London and the Vatican, as a sovereign zone. Well, it would be brought out of that sovereign zone, and the deep state's power structure would be torn apart simply because it would have no legal or symbolic standing any further. So when you start hearing about the grand juries that are convening, given Tulsi Gabbard's recent declassification of documents involving the coup attempt, that's all it can be described as, from Obama, from Clinton, from Brennan, from Clapper, from Rice, and many, many, many others. Those trials, or those grand juries, are probably happening already, and if not happening already, then very, very shortly. And some of those, I'm sure, we are going to see on TV. We are also going to see on TV the likes of the Clintons brought to Congress and made answer questions in front of the House Oversight Committee. They will probably also have to answer questions, because if you turn up for one committee, another committee can subpoena you as well on the same day. So they may find that they're bumped out of the Oversight Committee and straight into the Intelligence Committee, the Intelligence Oversight Committee as well, in which case both of them are in for a very, very, very long day. And with a little bit of luck, the world will get a lot more answers and will be a number of days closer to seeing justice meted out to those people who have been not just controlling America, not just controlling the American people, but have been disturbingly able to control the rest of the world as well. And that's in part why this is taking so long. We are seeing bits and pieces of it coming together now, I believe, in America particularly. And it is taking such a long time because of the resistance and the depth of evil that this world has been filled with. I'm running out of time tonight, but on another night we will talk about a very interesting idea that was put forward to me today. It's a very spiritual idea about Cain and Abel, and are we, the sons and daughters of Cain and Abel, still battling that spiritual war? Need to do a little bit more research and a little bit more thinking on that one before we talk about it publicly, but I would urge you to go and check out, I think it's the book of Genesis, the Cain and Abel story, and familiarize yourself with it if you're not, because not that there'll be a test, but you might be asked questions. So a whole heap of shit happened on the Australian Stock Exchange today. It went down by 0.3%. That's a dive, according to the ASX 200, and it certainly had a significant effect. It managed to wipe about $10 billion. Oh, I beg your pardon, wrong one. It managed to wipe about $10.25 billion off the exchange. And interestingly, it fell 0.3% on the back of the Commonwealth Bank, its largest company listed on the ASX 200, returning figures of profit, big profit, about $12 billion worth of it. Now, how is it that the biggest company on the ASX 200 announces a profit, and both the company shares and the ASX 200 drop significantly? Do you think it might be worth putting your money in gold and silver, folks? Do you think the market's doing some really weird things? Does that not make you go, that's definitely weird? Now, I can look at it and say, that's definitely weird, because I'm not invested in the stock market in any way, shape, or form. I could care less if the arse falls out of it overnight. Doesn't really worry me. I'm not invested in it. But if you are, I imagine it would worry the shit out of you, particularly if you've still got your super invested in big super and you haven't woken up to the fact yet that self-managed super funds are your only way to control your own wealth, your own future. And of course, a self-managed super fund is very easy to set up. And the team from Freedom Financial Solutions, Mary Jane, her team, and Cass, who will be on the show tomorrow night talking about the Great Reset, by the way. And that'll have something to do. You'll learn more about self-managed super funds with that, because you can protect yourself. Can't stress it to you enough. Self-managed super funds. If you want details, email me. I'll hook you up with Mary Jane and the team at Freedom FFS, and just ask the question. Now, you might say, I don't have enough super fund. I don't have enough money. And yep, you're right. If you don't have 150, 200 grand in there, it's probably difficult to do by yourself unless you're willing to pay a lot of fees to the bastards that currently possess your super. But there are ways and means around that, particularly if you've got other members of your family who are in a similar situation, or you've got friends who are in a similar situation that don't have much by way of super. You can band together. And once you break through that $150,000, $200,000 barrier, then all of those fees and charges are, well, they only get charged once, and they get split between however many people are in your SMSF. So it's a lot cheaper. But don't take that from me. I am not the one to give you financial advice in any way, shape, or form. But if you are interested in self-managed super funds and protecting yourself from oscillations in the market like this, and this is just a minor tweak in the Australian Stock Exchange. What's going on with silver cannot keep going on the COMEX market in the US. It cannot. The secret is out. There is more questions being asked about Fort Knox and how much gold really is in there. I showed you a story the other night. I haven't been able to back it up in any real, I mean, there's other sort of what I'd call low-level media stories reporting it, but I haven't found any first-hand information about the raid that was conducted on the Fed building in the United States, in New York, about 4 or 5 days ago, where helicopters landed on the roof, men in black carrying weapons, abseiling, all that sort of shit, raided the building. And they were looking for all of that gold that had been shipped back in to the Fed from the likes of the City of London a couple of months back, or a bit over a month back, when they were looking at going into Fort Knox and counting how much gold was actually in there, seeing whether or not it was all still there. So all this seems to be tying together quite nicely. The IRS still hasn't opened its doors in Washington, D.C. We've got people escaping the FBI hand over fist, resigning or being resigned. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino seem to be working their way forward pretty solidly through the moles in that organization. And Pam Bondi, like any good head of the Department of Justice, is saying nothing about these reports or these investigations that are going on at the moment. Investigations leading to grand juries, leading to sealed indictments. And that's what they're saying. Ghislaine Maxwell is operating under a sealed indictment. Now, how would you feel if what I've said in part, and I haven't told you all of it, but what Ghislaine Maxwell has said is true? How would you feel about that? Would you feel, okay, she has helped save the world by pointing out the deepest, darkest corners of the filth and where it hides? Is she worthy of a reprieve? Now, I'm not suggesting a pardon, but I am suggesting maybe, is it worth a sentence reduction or something? What is her negotiating point? Bear in mind, if everything that she says is true, if she can prove that there were instances of a Trump and Epstein association, which leads me back to the top story that we started out with and I never got to finish tonight, and that was their friendship around Prince Andrew and the way that Trump and Epstein supposedly, allegedly, developed a committee, a council called, wait for it, the Pussy Council or the Pussy Committee. And that was a committee of two, he and Epstein, who apparently got to select the women for Prince Andrew, who had a voracious appetite. I'm not sure if you're aware, but back before they stripped him of everything, including his dignity, he was on a royal trip to Thailand for the wedding of somebody special over there in the royal family. And while there, staying 4 days, he had 40 different women come to his room to service him. 40 women in 4 days. Even the hotel was shocked, and Andrew, from all accounts, couldn't have given two hoots about who knew. Didn't care. He was just simply there for the sex, and I suppose turned up at the wedding and drank the wine. Because like any good royal, why would you miss out on a freebie? So there is a lot to come out of what's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell and associated others. I can only hope that through her alleged testimony, if it is true, that the truth now will be able to filter down into Australia. And that might come by way of Dominion voting machines. Tulsi Gabbard has released details now that it is quite clear that voting machines were hacked, that the 2020 election was very definitely rigged, and there were large attempts made in the 2024 election to change the result of that as well. They have all the evidence required to prove it. Do you think there might be a need for the National Guard on the streets of Washington, D.C., folks? Do you think all those strange buildings that we've seen erected in different parts of Washington, D.C. and shrouded in white plastic might all of a sudden come to life in the near future and their true identity be revealed to the public? God, I hope so. Because I'd like to think that Albanese might pay a visit to a similar establishment in the not too distant future. Albanese has been panned for expanding the immigration system. Well, yahoo. Do you know who got priority in the immigration system up until today, apparently? Dog groomers, yoga masters, and martial arts instructors were prioritized over anybody with skills, like real skills, builders, carpenters, engineers. No, you didn't get priority coming to Australia. You got priority if you knew how to groom a dog, how to bend yourself into a pretzel, or some other useless friggin' task. That's the quality that we're allowing into Australia under Albanese's rules. I've been part of a lot of conversations in the last 2 days, folks. A lot of frustration, a lot of people very worried about this event coming up on August 31. And why are people like me worried about this event? Well, because nobody's owning up to be a face of it. There are vague, oh yeah, you can get up and speak mentions for a few people that I know, and I've cautioned every one of them to be very careful about getting up and speaking. This is not something I think has been well organized. I think this is something that's been slammed together and has been infiltrated so wholly that, and it's a beautiful job because it's putting forward an argument most Australians will support on the face of it. When you dig a little deeper, when you see a lot of the angst that's coming out of Melbourne, Thomas Sewell and his crew, the black, I don't know what they're calling themselves, but they're walking around all dressed in black at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, beating drums and chanting. And I tell you, folks, those groups are only going to get bigger. They are only going to get bigger. And the discussions that I've had in the last few days are, what do we do? You know, this big march has been touted to be about immigration. It's now going to have opposition marches put up against it on the day. So there goes our best chance at having a peaceful march, because there'll be a lot of emotionally charged, formerly Black Lives Matter folks who will want to run in and make this a big story. And it will be all the racists who've turned up are fighting the people who don't like the racists. So just be careful, folks. If you turn up to one of those rallies, well, I don't give a shit what state it's going to be in. It has been infiltrated to the max. You are placing you and your family in danger. Not just immediate danger on the day, but if you're stupid enough to register yourself as attending, then you're going to be on the books for life. So be very, very, very wary. I commend the idea of a march for all Australians. For all Australians. Now, I don't care whether you're black, blue, brindle, yellow, purple, or green. The colour of you does not matter. What matters is our Australian culture, our Australian lifestyle, and your ability to be part of it. Now, if you're naturally born into Australia to naturally born Australian parents, you are naturally probably going to have a pretty warped Australian sense of humour and our own certain way of doing things. If you come to this country from another, and you've already been through your formative learning years, you come with your lived, learned experience from a third world, second world country, or worse, and you come here with that lived world experience. And while you might initially be dazzled and thankful for the abundance that you now appear to have, you get to see that you don't get as much of it as everybody else. And what we see now, particularly in places like Melbourne, is numbers of people who are reverting to what they knew and what they had to do to survive in their previous country. Pick up a machete and fight for it. Now they've seen that picking up a machete here in Australia, or any other weapon for that matter, can have the same effect. They don't actually have to go through and chop people's arms off, although it's bloody effective when the odd one happens. So effective now that the Victorian state government seems to think that all the crooks are just going to put their machetes in these big anonymous bins out the front of police stations. Well, it happened once before, didn't it, folks? They did it with guns. Pretty easy. And just to finally wrap up for tonight, Kangaroo Island got a bit of a rattle overnight. About 1 o'clock this morning, a 3.6 magnitude quake just north of Panadana, I think it's called, or something like that, out into the Gulf. A quake of 3.6 magnitude at 10 kilometres depth. It woke up about 12 people and a few kangaroos who were having a bit of a lie-in at 1 o'clock in the morning, as you'd expect. 10 kilometres. Interesting. I was going to say draw a line between there and the Edinburgh Air Force Base in South Australia, but that might be saying too much. Thank you to folks who emailed me to say thanks for the tip on this flag. They didn't realise that the reason the stars had different points or different number of points was to illustrate their intensity of the Southern Cross. So the lowest point of the Southern Cross, the bottom star, has 9 points to it. It is the brightest of all the stars in the Southern Cross if you look at it. And then if you count those stars points backwards, you'll find that they go 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and that is for order of intensity. So in case you missed it last night, there you go. That's a little tip for things to do with our land flag and what some would call our only flag. The flag isn't important. What's important is the intent. We're going to talk about marches. We're going to talk about coming together. I didn't ever think I'd be talking about being involved in something like this, but it will not be the march on August 31st, because the way that this is being framed, structured, and now has been infiltrated, it makes it a dangerous event, but it also makes it useless to the movement. Absolutely useless to the movement. If you want a great day out, go for a walk on a beach or go for a walk in a forest or go and walk up a mountain that's been barred to you by the government because they've decided that white man's feet dirty the ground that you want to walk on. Mount Tibrogargan leaps to mind in the Sunshine Coast hinterland straight away. Mount Warning in the northern New South Wales area. And most of, I think, the Victorian High Country these days, have they shut that down yet? They're coming bloody close, I'm sure. I must get Simon back on for another chat, or else I can get the guys from 4-Wheel Drive 24/7 to come on. They're local to me around here somewhere. I've just got to find out where they are. All right, folks, I'm going to love you and leave you tonight. After the closer, I normally put up a little something to give you a laugh or something to give you a smile or something to give you pause for thought. Tonight, after the closer, I'm going to throw a little something up that I found today. Could just as easily have come out of my phone after a big night out in my halcyon days in the 80s and 90s. I encourage you to read it and learn from it. Have yourself a bloody good night. Stay off the roads because the dickheads are out there. But if you can't stay off them, just avoid them as best you can. Talk soon.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!